Hello, welcome to the Committee on Assembly Legislative Operations and Elections. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblymember Cole. Here. Dickman. Here. Edgeworth. Present. Gonzalez. Here. Hibbets. Here. Howdigi. Here. Miller. Here. Monroe Moreno. Here. Moore. Here. Nadeem. Present. Chair Mosca.
And I am here. Thank you so much. Welcome to the audience here in Carson City, those joining us by video conference in Las Vegas, and those listening over the internet. We'll go over some housekeeping items before we begin. Please silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state and spell your name for the record, which helps our committee secretary and any affiliation. Then turn off the microphone each time you're done speaking. There are hard copies of the meeting materials available for members of the public, and members of the public may also access electronic copies of the materials on our website. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the meeting. We expect courtesy and respect in all of our interactions during the meeting, even if we don't agree with one another's positions. And of course, committee members are viewing items on their laptops, so please do not view this as a sign of inattention or disrespect. And with that, we're excited. We have some senators joining us today, and we will take items out of order today. So we will first hear SJR 10, followed by Senate Bills 102 and 274. So at this time, I will now open the hearing on Senate Joint Resolution 10. This measure urges Congress to take certain actions relating to the therapeutic use of certain psychedelic compounds. We're excited to have you here today, Senator Nguyen, and a reminder, you will have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Mosca and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Rochelle Nguyen, and I represent Senate District 3 in Clark County. Today, I'm presenting Senate Joint Resolution 10, which describes the potential benefits for therapeutic use of certain psychedelic compounds and urges the United States Congress to take certain actions to address barriers to such use. Today, I have two presenters that are here with me today. And at first, I'm going to turn this over, I believe, to Kate. Or Kate, are you first? I'm going to turn it over to Kate Cotter, and she will go through the bill.
Thank you, Senator Nguyen. Good afternoon, Chair Mosca, Vice Chair Gonzalez, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Kate Cotter, Katecotter, and I'm representing Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Joint Resolution 10, which urges Congress to take several critical actions regarding the therapeutic use of certain psychedelic compounds. This resolution addresses the urgent mental health crisis affecting millions of Americans, including veterans, first responders, and Nevada residents who struggle with the conditions such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders. For many patients, conventional treatments prove inadequate, leaving them without effective therapeutic options. SJR 10 is grounded in substantial scientific evidence. The resolution highlights how clinical research has demonstrated that compounds including psilocybin, psilocin, DMT, ibogaine, mescaline, and MDMA show promising therapeutic potential when administered in controlled clinical settings. This resolution highlights phase 2 and 3 clinical trials demonstrating the effectiveness of psychedelic-assisted therapy. MDMA-assisted therapy led to 67% of patients with severe PTSD no longer meeting diagnostic criteria after treatment, and psilocybin-assisted therapy showed a 75% response rate and a 58% remission rate in individuals with major depressive disorder at 12 months. Additionally, we cite a Stanford University study on ibogaine, which found significant reductions in PTSD, depression, and anxiety symptoms in veterans with traumatic brain injury, with 88% reduction in PTSD symptoms, 87% reduction in depression symptoms, and 81% reduction in anxiety symptoms at a 1-month follow-up. The federal government has begun to recognize this potential. The 2024 National Defense Authorization Act directed the Department of Defense to establish a process for service members to participate in psychedelic clinical trials and allocated $10 million in funding. The Department of Veteran Affairs has launched research partnerships with Brown University and Yale University to study MDMA-assisted therapy for veterans with PTSD and alcohol use disorder. Despite growing research and bipartisan recognition of the potential benefits of psychedelic-assisted therapy, the federal classification of these compounds remains a roadblock. Under Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, these medicines are classified as having no accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse, a designation that directly contradicts extensive clinical research and the FDA-recognized breakthrough therapy designations, notably for MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD and psilocybin-assisted therapy for treatment-resistant depression and major depressive disorder. Given these facts, SJR 10 specifically urges Congress to increase federal funding for research into the therapeutic applications of psychedelic compounds, establish a streamlined process for approving and conducting research while maintaining appropriate safety protocols, create a pathway for compassionate use under the Right to Try Act, reschedule psilocybin, psilocin, DMT, ibogaine, mescaline, and MDMA to reflect their therapeutic value, establish legal protections for individuals and entities complying with state and local laws regarding psychedelic use. This resolution also affirms Nevada's commitment to advancing research at qualified institutions, ensuring that policy keeps pace with scientific discovery. The emerging scientific consensus on the therapeutic potential of these compounds presents a rare opportunity to expand treatment options for those desperately in need of effective mental health treatments. By supporting this resolution, Nevada can lead with foresight, responsibility, and a commitment to breakthrough mental health solutions that meet the real needs of our citizens. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee at this time.
We have one more presenter. If I could turn this over to our next presenter, John Dalton.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca, Vice Chair Gonzalez, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is John Dalton, Jondalton. I'm a Nevada veteran, and I represent the Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines. As many of you know, when SB 242 passed during the last session, it created the Psychedelic Medicines Working Group. Out of that working group came the working group report, and a copy has been sent to all the members. The working group report has outlined the preponderance of scientific evidence and clinical research supporting the therapeutic potential of psilocybin and certain entheogens, particularly in treating conditions that have proven resistant to conventional therapies. The report identified that approximately 24.6% of Nevada adults experienced mental illness in the past year, notably higher than the national average. The state faces particularly concerning suicide statistics, ranking 9th highest in the nation in 2021 with 691 suicide deaths. Of particular significance is the potential impact on Nevada's veteran population, where the suicide rate of 50.7 per 100,000 significantly exceeds the national veteran rate of 33.9 per 100,000 and the general population rate of 18 per 100,000, so that's over triple. This is relevant because psychedelic therapy has proven to be effective at lowering these numbers. Recent clinical research has shown remarkable efficacy in treating treatment-resistant depression, anxiety in cancer patients, PTSD, and substance use disorders. The working group report also addressed shortcomings on the federal level of how these medicines are classified. I come before you today to address the urgent need for federal action and to articulate the serious consequences if Congress fails to act. The outdated Schedule 1 classification of these medicines creates three critical barriers. First, it stalls medical research and innovation. Leading research institutions such as Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Yale, and NYU have dedicated programs for psychedelic science. And even our own beloved University of Las Vegas, with Dr. Hines leading the way, and I see him in the audience down there in Vegas, studies the science behind psychedelics. Yet, Schedule 1 restrictions significantly slow down clinical trials and funding opportunities. Physicians and researchers face excessive bureaucratic hurdles compared to studies involving other controlled substances, even those with higher abuse potential. Without federal action, progress in developing these treatments will continue to lag, delaying access to life-saving therapies. 2, it blocks patient access, even when evidence supports treatment. Patients with PTSD, depression, and substance use disorders, many of whom have exhausted all conventional treatment options, are unable to access these therapies due to federal restrictions. I myself have had to leave the country and travel to Mexico so I could legally engage in what was truly a life-saving therapy. When we consider PTSD, let us also recognize many of our own Nevadans suffer from this debilitating disorder as a result of mass casualty events. These medicines have proven themselves as the ideal treatment option to heal from those horrors. The Right to Try Act, which allows terminally ill patients to access investigational treatments, does not apply to Schedule I substances, and so it does not apply to these psychedelic medicines, meaning that individuals in dire need are denied potential relief. That means our veterans and first responders with major depressive disorder and are actively engaging in suicidal ideation, as well as end-of-life terminally ill patients who suffer with that specific and terrible kind of anxiety, cannot be treated by these medicines despite dozens of studies validating treatment efficacy. Third, it creates legal and public health uncertainty as states and local municipalities move forward. Many states and municipalities are not waiting any longer. They are moving ahead with their own psychedelic reform efforts, including Oregon and Colorado, which already have established regulated frameworks for psilocybin therapy. Without federal clarity, these efforts exist in a legal gray area, where patients and providers face uncertainty and potential federal intervention and an inability to get their treatments covered by health insurance. SJR 10 calls on Congress to reschedule these medicines and provide federal legal protections for individuals and entities complying with state and local laws, ensuring that jurisdictions that choose to regulate these treatments can do so without the threat of federal prosecution. As previously mentioned, Congress has taken preliminary steps with the National Defense Authorization Act and VA-funded research initiatives to conduct psychedelic therapy studies on our active duty military and veterans, but more must be done. With bipartisan support behind this resolution, Nevada is standing up to demand federal action, ensuring that science, not outdated drug policies, dictates access to life-saving treatment. I mentioned this is a bipartisan effort, and here in Nevada, that is true. Doing something to change the course of our state's mental health crisis is truly something we can all come together on. Having said that, we are not alone. Today, there are a total of 28 states that have active or recently passed legislation advancing psychedelic therapy. Out of those 28 states, 14 are red states and 14 are blue states. They all recognize these alternative treatments have profound benefits to cure our most challenging mental health disorders. These are states like Texas, Utah, Georgia, West Virginia, and Kentucky, to name a few. In fact, 3 out of 4 of our neighboring states are on that list of those who support. Each of those 28 states is pushing forward because the federal government has not acted, so they're not waiting. And yet for all of them to get insurance carriers to pay for this treatment and avoid federal intervention, these medicines must be shifted off of Schedule I. Every one of those other states needs Congress to take action. This is an easy win, and it will send a clear message to our fellow states that Nevada will lead the way. And at that, I welcome any questions from the committee.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will open it up to questions. We will start with Assemblymember Nadeem.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. That's very informative. So, my question is that, do you have the data from the other states that how much it has helped the people who are in depression, anxiety, PTSD? These treatments, how much they have helped them?
I will tell you that most of these states are brand new. So Colorado
Don't forget
hasn't
your
yet.
names.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. A lot of these states have not begun implementing these programs. Oregon has a program. I've had the ability to go and see some of their teaching schools, as well as some of the clinics that are like facilitating these things. They're still going through some of the like hiccups of being a new to this. Both of those states, both Colorado and in Oregon, passed by way of a ballot initiative. This gives us an opportunity to be on the forefront of not being told what to do, but being a part of like developing what will be a good program. And I think John might have some additional details as well.
I would also add that to Senator, I'm sorry, John Dalton for the record. I would also add that to Senator Wynn's point of many of the states are getting up to speed. They're not there yet. As a result, there's been thousands upon thousands, probably over 10,000 Americans that have traveled to Mexico and South America to seek this treatment and have gotten effective results.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you very much for the presentation. So my question, I did a little bit of research on this and had some conversations, of course, before session, but in looking at the Senate hearing, the work session that went through, and I think this was based on the sensitivity that, medical marijuana started with medical and then it moved to recreational pretty quickly, right? So I think there was a sensitivity from Senator Steinbeck on that. And there was a change in the amendment where the word supervised had been removed in section 5. And I believe that there was a commitment to put that back in. So I just wanted to follow up with you on that. That's my only question. Thank you.
And Rochelle Wynn, for the record, that is our intention, to put that supervised language back into the thing. You can see from the information that in our presentation that having a well-regulated, smart program is something that we're interested in doing. Again, this is in this letter to Congress. It is something that we want them to be able to consider, because that's the direction I think that we are interested in moving forward in our state.
Seeing no other questions, I'll ask my one question actually for the presenter down south. I did want to know very briefly what work is being done at UNLV on the research side.
Rochelle Wynn, for the record, we do have Dustin Hines, and I'm not sure who else is there.
Diane Goldstein.
Oh, we have Diane Goldstein. Yeah. If we can have Dustin do it. Part of the reason that I brought this bill in the first place is I realized and recognized that a lot of this research is already being done in our state. This is very much a Nevada thing. We are seeing research being done in Carson Tahoe Hospital. We are seeing partnerships with Stanford University. We are having conversations with our medical school up at the University of Nevada, Reno. Go Pack on this day today. But also down in the South, and that is where I first learned the research that was being done at UNLV with Dr. Hines and his wife, Dr. Hines. So I will turn it over him to answer any questions you might have.
I am one half of the Dr. Hineses. I am Dr. Dustin Hines, Dustinhines. I am a associate professor at UNLV in the Department of Psychology, and my research looks at psychedelics. I have a background in pharma, so when I was in Boston, I worked for companies and still work for companies like AstraZeneca and Sage Therapeutics. And when I came to Nevada, I had the joy of being able to study whatever I wanted. And so we started to look at treatment-resistant diseases of mental health, like depression. And we were amazed to find that there's compounds like psilocin and psilocybin that were, upwards of 70 and 80% effective in our preclinical models. Whereas when I was at pharma, if something was 10% effective, we had a big party and a dance. So we were kind of amazed that we weren't aware of this. So our lab really got into studying the receptor that these drugs work on, which is the 5-HT2A receptor, the serotonin receptor. And now research in our lab is 100% shifted to this focus with special interest in diseases like PTSD that you've heard about, diseases of major depressive disorder, anxiety, pain, eating disorders, addiction. These drugs are only not addictive, they're anti-addictive. And so it sounds like kind of a laundry list, which initially made me nervous, but this is a paradigm shift in science right now. The funding is an issue, obviously, and then being able to do this research is kind of a nightmare with the Schedule I. One of my undergrads once told me, it'd be way easier, Dr. Hines, if I just went down to that store and got all these drugs that they're selling than you paying all this money and doing it the right way. And so, I think this is a step towards making the science easier and more accessible to anyone. And happy to answer any questions or more specifics.
Great, thank you. That was helpful to me and answered my questions. Seeing no other questions on our committee. Thank you, Senator. We'll have you and your co-presenters sit back, and we will start and open up testimony in support of SJR 10. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. If you're here in Carson City or Las Vegas, you can start filling up the tables. Please keep your comments to the resolution and not the bill sponsor, and members of the public may provide testimony in person or over the phone by calling 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 816-5424-7375. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record, and you will have 2 minutes. Whoever would like to start may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca, Vice Chair Gonzalez, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Gerrig Tucker, Gehrigtucker. While attending the U.S. Army Special Forces qualification course, I sustained 2 traumatic brain injuries in a matter of 3 days. I had no idea the brutal path of depression, suicidal ideation, isolation, and despair that would follow. When I was removed from active duty after my TBIs, I felt truly lost. I was disconnected from my purpose, my tribe, and most importantly, myself. I forgot who I was. The little boy inside me seemed like a distant memory, and I could no longer associate with who he was. In addition, my cognition had declined so severely to the point that simple tasks like trying to organize laundry or changing my oil were nearly impossible without writing a step-by-step list to follow. I had tried all current medical treatments available to me at the time in Western medicine, including transcranial magnetic stimulation, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, prolonged exposure therapy, and 4 different SSRIs, all to no avail. The current approach to mental health care in the United States offered no reprieve, and had I trusted in the system that was in place now, I would not be speaking to you today. I had to leave the country that I signed up to serve to seek medical treatment that worked, and it was more effective than I could possibly imagined. Since I began treatment, I have experienced a clearer mind, more compassion for myself and others, better sleep, and the ability to feel emotions. I'm not alone. Tens of thousands of Americans have had to leave the country to access psychedelic-assisted therapies like Ibogaine because our laws still classify these treatments as having no medical value and a high potential for abuse, even under medical supervision. This could not be further from the truth. Supporting SJR 10 and urging Congress to reschedule these life-saving medicines will bring hope to the thousands of Nevadans who suffer from mental health disorders and opioid addiction by expanding research and providing access to these medicines in a regulated, controlled, and safe manner. Thank you for your consideration in supporting this bill.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis, President of Communication Workers of America, Local 9413. As a Marine and a veteran, I support anything that'll help our vets. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca, Vice Chair Gonzalez, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Matt Peek, M-A-T-T-P-E-E-K. My experience with psychedelics began several years ago. I was 53, a firefighter, and a single parent of 2 young children. I believed the emotional pain I carried was a normal part of being a single parent, part of the job as a first responder. Even before having kids and a career as a firefighter, I had been in and out of talk therapy. Over those 20 years, I was trying to find the source of a pain I did not understand. It could have been anything: personal loss, a number of injuries, the hundreds of traumatic 911 calls over my career. None seemed extreme on their own, yet no matter how good life looked on the outside, inwardly I struggled. Therapy, meditation, and countless self-help books offered no real relief. Over time, that sadness deepened into a daily depression. My ex and I split up when my children were 1 and 4. About 7 years later, the pain had grown so overwhelming that I understood why people commit suicide. I barely slept, was angry and sad most of the time, and each month I grew worse. I started losing my temper at work. One morning after losing my temper at a coworker, I went to apologize to him, but I just broke down sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't realize how broken I was until that moment, and I knew then that I needed real help. I did not know how to make the pain stop, and I realized the only thing that was keeping me alive was being a father to my little girls. I decided to pursue psychedelic-assisted therapy. During that initial session, for the first time in many years, I felt relief and hope. I also knew the real work was just beginning. I began learning to absorb these insights and integrate them into my daily life, and to communicate honestly with myself and others. This therapy has been profoundly transformative and continues to help me navigate the challenges. I have made steady progress with my depression. I'm a better, more patient father, and I am more compassionate, empathetic, and understanding to all of those around me. This is why SJR 10 matters. We must urge Congress to reschedule these medicines expand access, and invest in research so we can offer a lifeline to others, especially our veterans, first responders, and anyone who carries invisible wounds through life. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Assembly members. My name is Maria Teresa Hank, Hank, and I urge you to, I'm in here for support for SJR 10. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Chair Mosca. Sheila Bray with the University of Nevada, Reno, spelled SHEILA-BRAY. We are here in full support of SJR 10 and thank Senator Nguyen for bringing forth this measure, specifically as it highlights the research needed to continue to understand how to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no others in Carson City, we will go down to Las Vegas.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca and members of the committee. My name's Lieutenant Diane Goldstein, DIANE, GOLDSTEIN, and I'm the Executive Director of the Law Enforcement Action Partnership. I'm here today to express our strong support for SJR 10, which would urge Congress to reschedule psychedelic medicine, allocate funding for research, and expand access to psychedelic-assisted therapies. We believe this resolution is essential for improving public health and safety and is part of a two-bill agenda this session that is necessary to move Nevada forward. LEAP is an international nonprofit group of police, prosecutors, judges, and other criminal justice professionals who speak from firsthand experience serving in the criminal justice system. As law enforcement, we believe that individuals struggling with conditions such as PTSD, depression, and substance use disorders should have access to care, not face punishment or stigma. Yet for decades, our justice system has treated these disorders as criminal issues rather than public health concerns. 60 years ago, psychedelics were being researched widely in the United States for their medicinal and mental health benefits prior to President Nixon's war on drugs, which wrongly placed this class of substances under Schedule I without any evidence to support that designation. We know these substances have medical value, and when used correctly, they can change lives. Once we expand this work, we can save all Nevadans' lives. That's why I'm asking you for help to help us save first responders and our veterans by supporting this important resolution. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Seeing no others in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone line for support of SJR 10.
To testify in support for SJR 10, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public lines are open and working. We have no callers for support at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will move to testimony in opposition to SJR 10. If you are here in Carson City, seeing no one approaching, as well as seeing no one approach in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone lines for testimony in opposition to SJR 10.
Testify in opposition to SJR 10, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will hear neutral testimony on SJR 10. Seeing no one coming up here in Carson City and seeing no one in neutral in Las Vegas, AVH will go back up to you for neutral testimony on SJR 10.
To testify in neutral to SJR 10, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for neutral.
Thank you so much. And with that, I'll invite Senator Nguyen up for closing remarks, and she has waived them. So I will thank everyone for sharing your story today. And with that, we will close the hearing on SJR 10. Thank you. With that, we will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 102. This measure revises provisions relating to elections. We have Senator Daly presenting SB 102, who is the Vice Chair in Legislative Operations and Elections in our other house. You may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Skip Daly, representing Senate District 13. And for some of you, you'll remember this is a revision of SB 133 from the last session on false electors. There are, however, several adjustments from the previous version. And I will quickly explain those changes before I walk through the bill. First, there's a new general section with a separate penalty clarifying that it's illegal to submit a false instrument with the intent to defraud or one that contains a false signature. Working with the Attorney General's office and Chief of Staff Benitez Thompson, that language I think came from Michigan, and it's just a general provision that will go in the election law, not specific to the false electors, but just to submitting a false document with the intent to defraud in general. Second, the penalty, if convicted of creating, serving, or conspiring to create or serve in a false slate of electors, has been reduced from the previous bill from a non-probationable 4 to 10 year sentence to now a conditional probation of 1 to 4 years sentence. Third, language that said a person convicted of creating, serving, or conspiring to create or serve in a slate of false electors cannot work in any state or local government position has been removed and revised. It now only prohibits such a person if they're convicted from being elected or serving in an appointed position, state or local government. So you can still work for a state or local government, just not in an elected or appointed position. The reduction in the criminal penalty and the employment restrictions is among other considerations that I considered and changed in response to the governor's veto message. He did veto Senate Bill 133, where he believed that the restrictions on unrelated employment was too harsh compared to, that the penalty and the restrictions was too harsh compared to other crimes like drug trafficking and domestic violence. However, the governor in his veto message did say that there should be strict punishments for those engaged in schemes to present slates of false electors. And schemes is his words. I can read some of the veto message where he said SB 133 he believes that there should be harsh penalties for this terrible crime, and he admitted and called it a crime himself. I'm just hoping that with these adjustments to address the two main issues that he had in his veto message, the governor can find his way clear to sign this bill. Walking through the bill very quickly, Section 1 of the bill is the new language I mentioned above, making a crime to submit a false document under this title with the intent to defraud or a document that contains false signatures. Section 3 of the bill, subsection 1, makes it illegal to create, serve, or conspire to create or serve on a false slate of electors. Subsection 2 states that the penalty if convicted, which includes a possible 1 to 4 year sentence, a fine up to $5,000, and the payment of any cost for investigation or in prosecution. Subsection 3 states the conditions of probation. So it can be, you can get probation, but it's conditional on 6 months in county jail. Subsection 4 states who and how to file a notice of complaint to the Secretary of State. Subsection 5 states that the Secretary of State shall investigate the potential violation, and if there appears to be a violation, he shall either initiate the proper proceedings directly or refer it to the Attorney General for prosecution. Subsection 6 grants the Secretary of State subpoena authority, which we think they already have, but it's just good to have it. Subsection 7 prohibits a person convicted from creating, serving, conspiring to create, to serve on a false slate of electors from being elected or serving in an appointed position, as I mentioned earlier. And then subsection 8 is has the same definitions, defines the acts of conspiring to create, creating, and serving on a false slate of electors. So if you have to get in a prosecution situation, if you commit these acts, then you know what you were doing, and it's easier for them to prove if there is a prosecution. Sections 5 and 6 prohibits a person convicted of creating or aspiring to create a slate of false electors from having their right to run for elective office restored. And Section 7 is the effective date, which is upon passage and approval. Happy to answer any questions. Some of you saw this from the last session. Basically, we reduced the penalty and removed some of the restrictions on future employment, trying to address the governor's veto message, and I'm ever hopeful.
Thank you, Senator Daly. And with that, we will start with questions. First, we go to Assemblymember Miller.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this back. My question is, as it refers to, it keeps referring in the bill to a false slate of presidential electors. And so I'm wondering, based on the 22nd Amendment, which is very clear about how many terms a person could be elected to president per se, would this bill cover that? Would they be considered, if there was a situation where someone tried to run that exceeded what the 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution said, would they be considered a false slate of presidential electors?
Skip Daly again for the record, Madam Chair. Very good question. I personally think that the 22nd Amendment would prohibit anyone from running, thereby hopefully cutting that issue off. But I imagine, based on some of the actions that we've witnessed in the past, that somebody might try to say he should have been able to run, or somebody should have been able to run, and try to put in a false slate of electors. So that's how come I think the definitions were important. We worked with the Attorney General's office last session, or last time we brought this bill forward, to identify and spell out what are the acts. So if somebody, right, wrong, indifferent, created a document that they submitted to the Secretary of the State, sent off to the Archives Division in Washington, D.C., presented it to Congress and the Vice President as actual documents as electors, those acts would be a crime regardless of the 22nd Amendment or anything else, the way I understand it. But we would leave it to the lawyers to figure that out, but I believe it would still be a crime.
Follow-up, Chair? Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for that response, Senator. And so, again, just to clarify, this bill, regardless of what could happen in other states or federally, this bill just applies to the state of Nevada. So when we're talking about a false list or a false slate of electors, that would be if someone wasn't on the ballot in the state of Nevada.
Skip Daly again for the record. I believe so. So as you know, and people on the committee I'm sure know, the Electoral College is how we elect presidents. The Electoral College is set up based on the number of representatives in Congress each state has. Nevada had 6, so we have 6 electors. But how the electors are selected is entirely up to the states. As you know, most states have winner-take-all. Kansas and a couple, I think Maine, go by congressional districts. So it's not universal across the country, but most states have, majority wins. So both parties or any candidate, they put forward a slate of electors, not knowing who's going to win, but only the slate of electors for the candidate who got the most vote is eligible to turn in actual electors, or sign the affidavit that their candidate won to be counted in the Electoral College and sent on to Congress for counting. Anybody doing that for a candidate that didn't win, I believe would be captured by this bill.
Thank you so much for expanding on that, Senator. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator. I have a question for you on section. First, let me preface this by saying if legal was here, I would ask them this, but they're not. So I'm gonna,
Say again.
if legal were here, I would ask them this question.
Okay.
But they're not, so I'm going to ask you this question.
Assemblymember Hibbets, we do have legal in Las Vegas, if you want to ask
really?
them.
Wonderful. Maybe they can answer this one then. So in section 3, Subsection 2B, it says repay the costs of investigation and prosecution incurred by the Secretary of State or Attorney General as applicable, and I'll skip the rest of it, but you get the idea. My question is there another crime that anybody's aware of where the convicted has to pay the government for doing their job?
And I can defer this to Mr. McDonald, Senator. Okay, we'll start there. So, Mr. McDonald, we finally get to call on you in Las Vegas. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Aaron MacDonald, Committee Counsel. So this is a common provision used in Nevada law. I don't have the exact cites off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to get the Assembly member other provisions of Nevada law that use these cites.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald, and I appreciate getting to see you.
Thank you. Great. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Senator. We will have you sit back and we will now open testimony for SB 102. We will start in testimony and support. Again, you'll have 2 minutes. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record. You can start filling up the chairs and I'll read out the number again for anyone calling on the phone today. 888-475-4499 and meeting ID is 816-5424-7375.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Carrie Durmick. That is KERRYDURMICK. And I'm the State Director for All Voters Local Action Nevada. We strongly support SB 102, as it considers the implications of ongoing legal proceedings related to fake elector activity. SB 102 would establish clear legal guidelines and consequences for individuals engaging in such actions in future presidential elections. This legislation strengthens election safeguards and reinforces accountability in our electoral process. Thank you for your time, and we ask you for your support of SB 102. Thanks.
Seeing no others in Carson City and seeing none in Las Vegas, AVA2 will open up the phone lines for testimony in support of SB 102.
To testify in support.
To testify in support of SB 102, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in support of SB 102, please press *9. Chair, we have no callers for support at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will now hear testimony in opposition to SB 102. If you are here in Carson City, feel free to start filling in the chairs, seeing none in Las Vegas, so we will stay up here in Carson City. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party. We are concerned about this bill because the threat of prosecution could chill future presidential electors from performing their constitutional duties under the 12th Amendment and Title III of the United States Code, Section 7 and 9. Through 9. The Constitution requires the Electoral College to vote in December, well before Congress certifies the election in January, leaving room for post-election developments. This is not a partisan concern. In 1960, Democratic electors in Hawaii cast votes for John F. Kennedy, even though the state had certified Richard Nixon as the winner by 141 votes. A recount was finalized after the electoral vote revealed Kennedy had actually won. Because Democratic electors had cast conditional votes on December 19, 1960, Hawaii's electoral votes were ultimately counted for Kennedy on January 6, 1961. On the day of the Electoral College vote, the official vote count in Hawaii showed Nixon winning the state by 141 votes. Hawaii had certified this result in order to comply with the safe harbor deadline under the Electoral Count Act. Fortunately, both Democrat and Republican electors cast votes on December 19, 1960, and when Congress counted the electoral votes on January 6, 1961, the Democrat votes for president from Hawaii were counted because the governor had certified the corrected results. The language in Section 2, subsection 8B of SB 120 defines precisely the actions of Hawaii's 1960 Democrat electors, as it was not determined until December 28, 1960 that the vote count as certified prior to December 19, 1960 was incorrect. It was only due to the electors preserving their rights on December 19th, 1960 that the voices of Hawaii's voters were not silenced in the 1960 election. Had the official count from Hawaii not changed by January 6, 1961, then the Democrat elector votes would have been discarded and Nixon votes would have been counted in accordance with the official certificate of ascertainment from Hawaii. In point of fact, this is precisely what happened in 2020. Nevada's electoral votes were counted in accordance with the final certificate of ascertainment issued by Nevada. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state chairman of the Independent American Party. This bill has extraordinary penalties. It's like a vendetta or an opportunity to persecute and punish those they oppose. It goes far beyond any person that commits a felony because they can have their rights restored. They can serve on a jury. They can vote again. They can be elected to office again. But if you happen to be convicted under this, you lose all of those rights. It's extraordinary and extreme, and we certainly oppose that. Another problem with this bill is that if national popular vote were to go into operation under the compact that is available, this would be in direct violation of national popular vote, because if this state voted for the Democrat and the national popular vote was for the Republican, under national popular vote, we would be forced to have to vote for our electors for the Republican. So this is in direct violation to the national popular vote compact, which in the past Nevada has passed. Another real issue I have about it is the process. If you look on page 4, it says that the Secretary of State can refer this to the Attorney General to prosecute, but under that, in section 6, it talks about the Secretary of State getting all of this information, requiring by subpoena this information. This bill has a real problem with due process. How does the Secretary of State have the ability, the training, the criminal training, to get information, as this will be essentially a criminal trial? They will be convicted of a D felony. I don't know that the Secretary of State has that ability. Maybe the Attorney General does, but under this bill, it doesn't have to go under the Attorney General. It can be in the Secretary of State's office. And I do not believe that they have the kind of resources that are necessary in order to do this work so a person's rights wouldn't be violated. Because this bill could certainly violate the Fourth Amendment under search and seizure. It could violate the Fifth Amendment, that they shall not be required to testify against themselves. It could violate the Sixth Amendment, that they should have the assistance of counsel. I think there's a lot of problems with this bill, and we oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we do see more people in Las Vegas. So in case anyone is here to testify in opposition to SB 102 in Las Vegas, please join the table. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record, and you will have 2 minutes.
Hello, Devin Livesey. My name is Devin. Last name is Livziey. Thank you, members, for allowing me to testify today. I represent the Clark County Republican Party as the vice chairman, and I strongly oppose this bill. This bill does, as the previous speaker said, seem like quite the vendetta against what happened here in 2020. It already is defined in the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the role and the duties of the electors. I believe we need to allow the Constitution to speak for itself and continue along that role. If it wasn't for what happened in Hawaii in 1960, it could have changed the entire outcome of the election at that time if something like this was imposed to where those electors could not do what was right and justified for them to do. So for these reasons and the fact that there are so many flaws and holes in this bill, that I oppose this bill and hope you vote likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else come to the table in Las Vegas, AVH, we will open the phone lines for opposition to SB 102.
If you would like to testify in opposition of SB 102, please press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. My name is Iris
Stone, IRISSTONE. Senate Bill 102 represents a dangerous overreach that threatens political participation, due process, and the ability to challenge elections through legal means. While SB 102 claims to address election integrity, it instead creates new felony charges for actions that are already illegal. It opens the door to selective prosecution and politically motivated investigation. The bill's vague language fails to distinguish between criminal conduct and legitimate election disputes, creating a chilling effect on political engagement. In fact, the term, quote, false state of electors, unquote, is a misnomer and a cleverly made up term rendering confusion in this bill. Slate of electors selected pursuant to NRS 298.035 is indeed not false. It represents a very valid section of citizens who participate in Nevada elections. There is nothing felonious here. In addition, SB 102 strips individuals of their right to ever hold public office if convicted, without any path for restoring those rights. This is permanent political ban, not just a criminal penalty. Election law should not be weaponized to silence opposition or discourage legal challenges to contested results. Most concerning is that SB 102 does nothing to improve actual election security, does not address voter verification, ballot chain of custody, or other real election integrity concerns. Instead, it targets individuals and campaigns who dare to question election outcomes. We already have laws on the book that prevent election fraud. This bill is unnecessary, redundant, and ripe for abuse. I urge this committee to reject SB 102 and stand against efforts that could be used to intimidate citizens from engaging in the democratic process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. APH, next caller, please.
Hello, hopefully you can hear me. CYRUSHOJJATY. Good afternoon. I appreciate the efforts of Senator Daley, but I will stand in opposition, and I will ditto the comments made by Iris Stone and Janine Hansen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the State Vice President of Nevada Families for Freedom. SB 102 seems to be a political reaction by events of 2020, and should a future presidential election have issues requiring litigation, Congress included the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act of 2022, the ECRA, in the passage of H.R. 2617, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, which was signed into law by President Biden in January of 2023. SB 102 seeks to unconstitutionally limit electors from exercising their legal rights and is unnecessary due to the reforms passed in the ECRA. Nevada cannot interfere in the execution of a federal function where such is an activity that did not exist prior to the Constitution, such as electors voting for president. Justice Story recognized, quote, the states can exercise no powers whatsoever which exclusively spring out of the existence of the national government, which the Constitution does not delegate to them. No state can say that it has reserved what it never possessed, unquote. U.S. Term Limits Incorporated versus Thornton, 93-14-56, 514 U.S. 779, 1995. Please vote no on SB 102. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Kimberly Fergus, KIMBERLY FERGUS. I wasn't going to testify on this bill. However, when I was listening to the presentation, I just had to step in. So with me stepping in, I rise in firm opposition of SB 102. This bill, a bill that dangerously embeds accusations into law, any legal base or actual finding. Let's be clear, no court in Nevada has found him guilty of or participating in a so-called false slate of electors. Yet this bill writes that accusation in statutes as if it's a settled fact. That is not how the legal system works. In this country, we do not criminalize people based on political narratives or unproven allegations. This bill is not about strengthening elections. It's about advancing a political message by codifying one-sided interpretations of past events. It hands enormous power to partisan officials to investigate and prosecute based on perception, not proof. And it imposes lifetime bans from public office for individuals who may never have been convicted of a crime, just accused of wrongful doing under vague, politically charged definitions. SB 102 is not neutral law. It is an ideology-driven overreach that tramples on due process and the presumption of innocence. Our laws should protect citizens, not punish based on theater or media spin. For the sake of fairness, justice, and constitutional integrity, I urge you to vote no on SB 102. Thank you.
Thank you, AVH. Next caller, please.
My name is Cynthia Perrine. That's CYNTHIA Thank you to the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. I would like to express my strong opposition to SB 102. To criminalize the electors' objections to elections is a huge mistake and may indeed be unconstitutional, as has been brilliantly set forth in previous testimony. Rather than weaken the right of such persons to free speech and question election results, legislatures should do everything possible to strengthen voter confidence in our election laws. Please oppose this flawed bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, we have no additional callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we will hear neutral testimony on SB 102. If anyone is here in Carson City, seeing none and seeing no one in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone lines for neutral to SB 102.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. And Senator Daly, I invite you to make some closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, Skip Daly for the record. And I don't want to get yelled at again for making remarks that weren't nice. My mom would be mad, right? You know, nobody loses the right to vote under this. So anybody that said that was mistaken. I'll be as nice as I can about that. To people that say we are just going forward and you're accused and automatically guilty, apparently don't know how the law works in America. There are always allegations that have to be backed up by facts. There's an investigation, and if there's enough probable cause, then we go to trial, we do a court, and that's how it works everywhere in America. That's what this bill does. Nothing gets past the 12th Amendment and all that kind of stuff that they're talking about, and the Electoral College being set up. Fact of the matter is, the states determine how electors are selected. Each individual state gets to do that. It's not prohibited. In fact, it's required under the Constitution. The states have that right. And our state has chosen the slate of electors for the candidate that got the most votes is the only recognized slate of electors that's allowed to turn their votes in for the Electoral College. Nothing at all happened like they claim happened in Hawaii here. It was not that close. They did not pursue any of the other legal opportunities and means to challenge the results. They didn't do any of that. They just said, nope, our guy won, here's our slate of electors, undercutting, trying to sow the seeds of doubt in the election. This bill doesn't do that. This bill will stop people from doing such things. I will stop there before I get angry.
Thank you, and we will close the bill hearing on SB 102, and we will have Senator Daley for our next hearing on Senate Bill 274 that revises the provisions governing state boards and commissions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Skip Daly for the record, representing Senate District 13, here to present Senate Bill 274. I know your Majority Floor Leader will recognize some of this stuff that's in this bill from when she was the chair of the Sunset Subcommittee 2 interims ago, or previous interim. So SB 274 is a recommendation from the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission. Section 1 was deleted by amendment. What that section was proposing to do was to have boards and agencies, if there was going to be a vacancy, 60 days prior to that vacancy or within 60 days after the vacancy, to notify the governor of qualified people that could be nominated for that position. 29 agencies put in a fiscal note. Only one, or 29 agencies reviewed it, only one put in a fiscal note. So I said, I'm not going to fight that, and I deleted the section. It was only going to help the governor. He can do it anyway, tell his people what to do. So the 2 sections that are left also was recommended from the previous Sunset Subcommittee. It was included in a bill that the governor vetoed. He didn't have any objections to these 2 sections. His only reason for vetoing the bill was they wanted to appoint boards and commissions that reflected the diversity of the state, and he said that limited his ability to do his job. Fine. But the other 2 sections we think are worthwhile. So Section 2 requires the chair of the Legislative Commission to appoint the chair and vice chair of the Sunset Subcommittee of the Legislative Commission, rather than having the people that are appointed select the chair and vice chair. Section 3 deletes the requirement of a regulatory body to submit reports relating to agency activity pursuant to NRS 622.085. What that provision does is allow an applicant who wants to potentially put in an application to have them pre-vet to see if prior criminal history would preclude them from applying and being recognized. We are not deleting that opportunity for people to get that and put in the petition to review their criminal history. We're just eliminating the report. There are a couple of reports. We're limiting that report. The reason we know that the report's there, and your floor majority leader can attest to this as well, because under the Sunset Subcommittee provisions, there's a recommendation that we should review these petitions to see what type of activity has happened, how many people are putting it in. And the reports always came back as no activity. Nobody was really doing it, or it was working, and people said, hey, there's no activity that's going to stop you from being a therapist or whatever, or there is activity and they would move on. So it removes the section of the law that says the Sunset Subcommittee would now review these reports because there was no activity. So that's it in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions. This one should be much simpler than the last one.
Thank you, Senator. And with that, any questions here, committee members? Oh, you even answered some of our questions. Thank you, Senator Daley. Seeing no questions, we will start with testimony. So we will start with testimony in support of SB 274. I'll read it out one more time, 888-475-4499, 816-5424-7375. Seeing no one coming to the table in Carson City and seeing no one in Las Vegas, AVHU will go to you for support of SB 274.
Testify in support for SB 274. Please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for support at this time.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will open testimony in opposition to SB 274. Seeing no one coming to the tables in Carson City or Las Vegas, AVH will go to the phone lines.
To testify in opposition to SB 274, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for opposition at this time.
Okay, and then we will go to neutral for SB 274. Again, seeing no one in Carson City or Las Vegas, AVH will go to you for neutral for SB 274.
Chair, the public lines are open and working. We have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. And Senator Daley is waiving his closing remarks. So thank you for being here today for two bills, and we will close the hearing on SB 274. We know we'll see you again in Ledge Ups in the next couple weeks. So with that, we will move on to our last item on the agenda. Our last item of business is public comment. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. Written public comment may also be submitted to the committee up to 24 hours after the meeting. Remember, members of the public may comment on anything related to legislative and operations, but not comment on bills that have already been discussed during today's meeting because those bill hearings have closed. Same call-in number and meeting ID. Seeing no one in Carson City and seeing no one in Las Vegas for public comment, AVH, we will go to the phone lines for public comment.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. We have no callers for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any others, I will close public comment. Members, our next meeting will be Thursday, May 1st at 4 p.m. And seeing no other business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.